A look, a connection, the moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Home to a diversity of rare species, Latvia's pristine woodlands are a place of magic. But with a strained economy and an eager market, forests are rapidly perishing, and with them their inhabitants. People and Power investigates how 60% of Latvia's timber ends up on UK shelves with a questionable seal of approval. Latvia's pulp fiction, at this time on Al Jazeera.
As China undergoes profound changes, competition for jobs becomes a struggle to survive. Two graduates fresh out of college seek employment in a city of 8 million people. Now entering the real world, the graduates become increasingly desperate and begin to question their college-trained talents. It's a time of hope and frustration for the workforce of the future. Faces of China, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Backtracking to reach a breakthrough, Egypt's outlawed Muslim Brotherhood says it's now talking to the government. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha with continuing coverage on the crisis in Egypt. I'm Darren Jordan. Also coming up this half hour, as the overnight curfew ends, Egypt's El Baradei warns the protests could turn vicious. Changing faces. Gamal Mubarak quits his father's party. Will his replacement bring new hope? Accident or attack, a gas pipeline explodes in Egypt, cutting energy supplies to Jordan and Israel. And in other news, guilty of fixing the game, the Pakistani cricket players banned for bowling to lose. Hello, it's 0400 GMT, that's 6 a.m. in Egypt. The state-imposed curfew has now been lifted, and as daylight breaks on the 13th day of protest, the main opposition group, the Muslim Brotherhood, has confirmed it will take a seat at the discussion table with the Egyptian government. The group is officially banned in Egypt and had said earlier it wouldn't enter the dialogue until President Hosni Mubarak resigned.
We gave the condition that we didn't want just promises which will disappoint the great people who came out in their millions. They were attacked, and at that time we said we will not speak with the regime if what they say is just promises. We gave the condition that aggression against our people stop. Tens of Egyptians were killed. We gave the condition that anybody who caused harm to the Egyptian people over the past 30 years will be taken to court. We gave the condition that peaceful demonstrations should be the right of all Egyptians. They accepted this. We said the army must stay in its honourable position and support this nationalist movement. This condition was accepted. In light of this, we said this is the beginning of dialogue, this dialogue in which the demands of the people are given, and all groups are with us, including those who've lit the spark which brought the light.
Well, let's get the latest from Cairo now. One of our correspondents, who we're not naming for his own safety, joins us live now on the line. What more do we know about this Muslim Brotherhood statement, and how significant is it?
Well, it's highly significant, I think, in the light of, obviously, the last few days, and especially today. Excuse me. There have been political discussions with other opposition groups and independent opposition figures that have happened today with Vice President Suleiman. And I think that the Brotherhood were concerned that they were possibly missing an opportunity. They're Egypt's largest political group. They're banned from taking part in elections, although members do stand as independents. And they have a vast support here and are well respected for their social welfare network. So I think they they were sort of harnessing that moment, looking at the resignations of the NDP leadership, trying to express some of the views, a lot of the views of those protesting, although, of course, the people in the square, the protesters in the square, are far from all being Muslim Brotherhood members. But it is certainly a significant development in what could be the beginnings of a political dialogue.
Meanwhile, of course, the protesters remain in Tahrir for a 13th day now. What's the latest from the square?
Well, Darren, the square is very quiet. I mean, obviously it's very early morning here. The sun hasn't quite come up. It's quite cold. There has been some, over the last hour, there's been some singing and again, sort of ongoing kind of political chanting, if you like, of slogans. But it's very quiet. The military presence is nothing like it has been in recent days. But obviously they're saying they're going nowhere until their demands are met.
And what are we expecting to happen tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow, certainly outside the square, banks are scheduled to reopen. I think people are, although obviously a lot hold a similar sentiment to, the same sentiments as the protesters, I think they're interested in going back to work and restarting their lives. Schools remain closed, as do the big businesses. Meanwhile, inside the square, we hear that members of the Coptic community will be holding a church service with the protesters. And the protesters themselves have organised a day they're calling, I think, the Day of Martyrs, in commemoration of some of the people killed over the last few days.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that update. Well, these are the latest pictures from Tahrir, or Liberation Square, which has been the focal point of the movement to remove Mubarak from power. Here are some of the latest developments. Opposition figure Mohammed El-Baradei is warning that the unrest could turn increasingly vicious as the president continues to cling to power. Well, the leadership of the ruling National Democratic Party has resigned en masse, including Mubarak's son Gamal. And Barack Obama's special envoy Frank Wisner has backed Mubarak's plan to stay in power until September. The US State Department quickly insisted he does not speak for the government. Nick Spicer has more on the events of the last 24 hours.
Egyptian TV announces big changes in the ruling party. Gone are the executive committee and the president's son, Gamal Mubarak. But it's the father who's got to go for the demonstrators. Army troops tried to take down their barricades earlier in the day. The head of the Army's Central Command came to ask them to go home so the country could go back to normal. They chanted back, "We're not leaving, he is." But Hosni Mubarak wasn't. Not yet, anyway. He met with senior cabinet members to talk about the economy, reeling after 1 million tourists fled. Still, the government would slowly get back to business, the Prime Minister told the nation.
I mean, for every day that goes, stability returns and we are more hopeful. We no longer see the events happening like last Friday, and security forces are gradually returning. Today you don't hear about more clashes, which shows that generally things are getting better. The opposition itself is very divided, but this doesn't mean that we won't talk to all parties. In the end, the main thrust of their demands is the same.
But the demands of the international community seem to have changed. In a surprise comment on Saturday, the former U.S. ambassador Washington sent to Cairo to talk to the Egyptian president seemed to back off on none too subtle hints that Mubarak must go.
I therefore believe that President Mubarak's continued leadership is critical. It's his opportunity to write his own legacy. He's given 60 years of his life to the service of his country. This is an ideal moment for him to show the way forward.
U.S. officials quickly said he was speaking as a private citizen and his views were his own. But Western diplomats have been slowly changing their emphasis from the need for immediate transition to the need for an orderly one. With Hillary Clinton saying that could happen under Vice President Omar Suleiman, who reportedly doesn't want to ask Mubarak to leave office right now. And that won't satisfy the tired but proud protesters in Liberation Square. There may be some changes in Egypt's ruling party and even in the views of the international community, but they say they aren't going until their president does. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera.
Well, US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has maintained the more measured stance of the White House. Speaking at a security conference in Munich, she reiterated President Obama's call for change.
I urge the leaders of the region to address the needs and aspirations of their people and offer a positive vision for the future, for their sake and for ours. Because the region is being battered by a perfect storm of powerful trends, the status quo is simply not sustainable.
Well, let's speak now to Robert Springborg in San Francisco, California. He's an expert on Egypt's armed forces. Robert Springborg, all the experts tell us that the Egyptian military is the key to resolving this crisis in the country. Do you think the army is perhaps dragging out a resolution to the crisis so as to exhaust the energy of the uprising?
Well, I think that's what's happening now. It was a very significant development that the Muslim Brotherhood has said, well, it's going to enter into